I have to wonder why the church decided to put this reading about paying taxes 2 weeks before Election Day. Just throwing it out there. It just hit me as I was reading it going like, really? You put this reading 2 weeks before we Americans have an election, talking about taxes? Anyway, it did make me think of a little story of a $1 bill, a $10 bill, and a $100 bill having a little conversation. And the $100 bill bragged and said, I've been to the best restaurants, been to the greatest shows, I've been all over the world. $10 bill said, I've been to some good movies, I've been to some nice restaurants, I traveled a little bit. And they said to the $1 bill, what about you? He says, me, it's the same thing every week. Church, 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 church. Now, I'm not saying that because we have to start the campaign for the diocese in a few months, but consider it. Today's gospel is really fascinating because we have this moment where the Pharisees are trying to trap Jesus. What's the trap? The trap is this. If Jesus tells them don't pay the tax, then they have something to accuse him of before Pilate and the Romans. They can go and say, listen, Jesus told us not to pay tax. Arrest him. If he says don't pay the tax, then the Jewish people, they can say, hey, listen, he's saying to obey the Romans. He's going against our faith. We're under occupation by those Romans, and he wants to pay the Romans. And then they'd accuse him before the Jews of being a Roman sympathizer. So it is a pretty good trap they got him in, because if he says, do pay the tax, he's betraying his Jewish faith. If he's saying don't, he's betraying the Roman government. It's one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations that they think they got Jesus caught in. And they try a few of these throughout his life, and he always seems to turn it back on them. You'd think by now they would have learned their lesson, but they didn't. So Jesus, so beautifully, he catches them. He recognizes their malice. He can hear in their words that they're trying to trap him in speech. And he even was told here by Matthew, knowing their malice, their ill will, knowing that this was not an honest question about taxes or not paying taxes, realizing this was a trap, Jesus says to them, why are you testing me, you hypocrites? Here you are trying to be all nice about this, but the reality is you're trying to trip me up. And then he flips it, pardon the pun. He says, show me the coin that pays the census tax. And so they hand him a Roman coin. So holding the Roman coin, he's like, whose image is this? Whose inscription? And they say Caesar's. So he says, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God's. It was a great way of saying to him, if that thing has Caesar's face on it, it has Caesar's name on it, then it belongs to Caesar. Give it to him. Give to God what is God's. And so they were kind of at a loss at this point. Okay, he won that argument, So he didn't say don't pay the temple tax, and he didn't say do pay. Let's just give to Caesar what's his. What's beautiful about this is because we can turn it around and look at it from a different angle. So Jesus takes a coin and says, whose image and likeness? Jesus could have done something different. He could have called up a poor man or a crippled man. He could have called up one of those people that were there with leprosy. He could have called up a rich man who was wealthy, a healthy man. He could have called up a woman. He could have called up Mary Magdalene, the prostitute. He could have called them some other holy woman, his own mother. He could have had a Jewish man stand there. He could have had a Roman man stand there. He could have had a black man. He could have had a white man. He could have had a Hispanic, or if there were Hispanics back then. He could have had anybody. He could have had a child or somebody in old age. Any human person, he could have stood before the entire crowd and asked the same question. Whose image is this? Whose inscription is this? And the simple answer would have been God's. Whether it be the poor man, or the rich man, the white man or the black man, the Jew or the non-Jew, the sick man or the healthy man, the woman or the man, the slave or the free, the old or the young. He could have stood any single human person in front of them and said, whose image is like this? And the answer would have been God's image. And he would have said the same thing. Give to Caesar what Caesar's, but give to God what is God's. You and I are made in the image and likeness of God. In our adult faith formation classes, if you haven't watched them online or come to class, we've talked a lot about the fact that we are images of God. That we can think, we can know, and we can love. Like God the Father, we have this memory where we store our knowledge. Like God the Son, we are wise and we have wisdom. Some of us, we can think. Like God the Spirit, we have a will for love and the goal of love of life. We bear God's image and likeness in us, and so because we bear his image and likeness, we are his. His inscription is on us. By the very fact that we are made in his image and likeness, we belong to him. And just as Caesar gives value to the coin, he says this much is worth 1 cent, this much is worth 5 cents, this much is worth 10 cents, this much is worth 50 cents. This is worth $1, $10, 20. He gives to each coin their value. So God gives to the human person our value. It's God who says what we are worth. And because we are made in his image and likeness, we are worth God himself. When we look at our redemption and God redeeming us, what did it take to redeem the human person? What was the value of the human person for the Lord to purchase us back from the slavery of sin? What was the cost of our redemption? The question comes down to, what is the human person worth? If we're made in the image and likeness of God, what value did God give to us? And the answer hangs above the altar. That is the value and the price that God has assigned to the human person. The only thing capable of redeeming us, of purchasing us back from the slavery of sin, was his own death, an eternal sacrifice offered to the Father for our redemption. A sacrifice that happened one time on Calvary and is perpetuated each and every time the holy sacrifice of the Mass is offered. The value of the human person, the value that God has given to us, is in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. That we are worth the death of the Son of God and the perpetual offering of the Son to the Father for our redemption and for our sanctification. It's God who says how much we are worth. And when we look at our worth, we have to look at where we came from in our being created in the image and likeness of God, but also our worth in our destiny. What is the end goal of our human lives? What is the end goal of our existence? Because that also speaks to our value as persons. Right? A coin, its value, it's printed, it's got the image of Caesar. He's assigned the amount to that coin, 10 cents, 20 cents. Right? And what's its end is to be thrown into the treasure chest. That's its end goal, is just to become part of a treasure chest of somebody. For God, us, we are made in the image and likeness of God, but we are destined for eternal glory. We are destined for intimacy with God. We are destined to be with God forever in eternity. We are destined to be literally in God in the most blessed Trinity. We are created for intimate union with God. Without ceasing to be who we are, we enter into this union with God. And God raises us into himself. It's so beautiful. The end goal of our life is not simply to leave a good-looking corpse. The end goal of our life is to enter into the intimacy of the unity with our Lord and God, who has loved us and has graced us and has blessed us. You know, we talk about this coin bearing the image and likeness of Caesar, bearing the inscription of Caesar. And each and every one of us, being created in the image and likeness of God, we bear that image of God. But that image, that inscription, was deepened at the moment of our baptism. When we were baptized, an indelible mark was made upon our soul. Indelible means it can never be washed away. It can never be erased. It can't be taken away. When we were baptized, it was like a sheep being branded. The mark of Christ was made upon our soul. So if I can see the soul of an unbaptized person and the soul of a baptized person, I can see them, I would see on the baptized person the indelible mark. Or for example, a week or so ago, I baptized a baby. Prior to baptism, if I saw the baby's soul, there would be no mark on the soul. After baptism, if I could see the soul, I would see that indelible mark. The inscription that says this child is now baptized and belongs to Christ. Just as the marking on a sheep or cattle tell every rancher whose cattle it is or whose sheep it is, so with us our souls were branded with that indelible mark that proclaims that this is a child of God now reborn in the waters of baptism. When we were baptized, our value was increased. We went from being worth 20 cents to being worth $1 million. Maybe 20 cents is a little low, but our value went up because we were freed of original sin. We were graced by God through the gift of sacramental grace, the gift of sanctifying grace, the indwelling of the most blessed Trinity. And so in the state of grace, our value was increased by a billion, bajillion into eternity because we received the grace that flowed from that cross at the moment of baptism. This precious gift that we have been given. The gift of sanctifying grace, the grace of that indelible mark, the grace of being adopted children of God, this value. We are only devalued when we walk away from that gift. When we enter a life of sin, when we get caught in habits of sin and we move away from God, then we devalue the gift. That's the grace of the confessional. That's where our value goes back up again. We get brought back into the state of grace. We get inflation, I guess you call that. I don't know. Not so good at my economics. All I know is our value is restored to us in the beautiful sacrament of confession. So my brothers and sisters, today as we listen to Jesus tricking the Pharisees with their own trick, flipping it back on them, we do see the wisdom of Christ, but we see something even more. We see in one sense our dignity, our worth, the beautiful gift and the grace of baptism, that inscription on our souls of belonging to Him. And we should be seeking each and every day to reach the glory for which we have been created, to reach the kingdom to which we have become heirs, and to carry this valuable soul that we are, to stand before God in all of its worth and receive the beautiful grace of that kingdom. So today, may we have the grace of looking in the mirror and knowing the truth, that we are made in the image and likeness of God, that His name is inscribed upon us, and we are His. And today, may we belong to God, give to God what is God's. You. May God bless you.
and Mary keep you.